Hi, this is Jacob Sapochnik. Welcome everybody to the Enchanting Lawyer Podcast. This show we talk about marketing, business, and leadership. And today I have Alexis Neely. Alexis is an attorney. She's the founder of the New Law Business Model, a company that has revolutionized the way personal and legal services are provided to families and small businesses. She's a serial entrepreneur with several companies behind her, frequently featured on TV and radio. And Alexis, welcome to our show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
How are you today?
I'm doing wonderful.
Alexis, why don't you start? I mean, our audience is attorneys and professionals, and I'm sure many of them know you already. But I would like you to introduce yourself and tell me about, yourself and how you got there, where you are now.
Sure. Yeah, so I started not anticipating that I was going to be an entrepreneur. I graduated first in my class from Georgetown Law School specifically so that I would be able to get a job at one of the biggest and best law firms in the country so that I would not have to be out on my own. And I did that. I went to work at Munger, Tolles & Olson. I was there for 3 years. And while I was there, I was driving 20 miles each way in LA traffic. I had a baby in my last year of law school, or I got pregnant in my last year of law school, and she was born during my clerkship on the 11th Circuit. And so when I started at Munger Tolles, I was already a mom, and nobody else was, in the same position that I was, a new associate with a child, and I felt like I didn't fit in. And I kept asking myself, what's wrong with me? I made it, the pinnacle of success. I'm 27 years old. And everything that I've wanted to do has come true. Why am I not happy? And fortunately, around that time, I came across a woman who I saw was really happy in her career. She was a businesswoman. She was working from home. She was able to be there when her children got home from school. She loves her clients. She was in the field of marketing and advertising. But as I heard her speaking about this, I thought, I want to be happy like that too. But I still didn't think that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I bought this woman's book because I figured if I didn't want to learn what she did, but I wanted to try and glean any insights I could to have the kind of life that she had. And when I did, I read the acknowledgments. And in the acknowledgments, I saw that she referred to a coach. Now this was back in, 2001, 2002. So back in the day when coaching was still weird. Certainly not appropriate for lawyers, but nevertheless, always wanted to, buck the establishment. I hired that coach. She lived all the way across the country in Atlanta. I lived in California. And I think the investment at that time was something like $350 a month, which, today I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on coaching since then. But back then, that was a huge amount of money for me. I had never paid for any coaching. I had not even ever really spent any money on myself, period. One of the first things that this coach did with me is she started asking me questions like, when's the last time that you got your hair cut? When's the last time that you got a pedicure? When's the last time that you went to the dentist? When's the last time that you exercised? And I was angry. I said, why are you asking me these questions? You're supposed to be helping me be happy in my work. Well, she said, if you're not engaging in self-care, you're never going to be happy in your work. It doesn't matter what work you're doing, what business you're in.
So true.
Right? And so that ultimately led me down the road of going to the dentist, getting my hair cut, starting to exercise regularly, starting to do these little self-care things that then led into an experience that I'm going to tell you about that was a big wake-up call for me. And I was driving down the freeway about 6:30 in the morning in LA. Maybe it was 6 in the morning because I was waking up early at this point, getting on the highway before there was any traffic to go work out in the mornings before work started. And it was a beautiful morning, and I was just marveling at how beautiful the sun was coming up over the freeway, and there was a car in front of me, and all of a sudden the car is driving along, and then it swerves out of the way. And there's a huge roll of carpet in the middle of the freeway. And I had two choices. I could either hit the roll of carpet, and I'm in this little Volkswagen GTI little car, or I can swerve myself. So I swerve myself, and I find myself spinning across the freeway. And I hear this voice in the middle of my head that says, turn into the spin. Turn into the spin, which I start to do. And I come to a screeching halt facing the wrong way up against the median in the middle of this freeway. And my heart is pounding, and I get out of the car, and the next thing that I hear is a voice that says, "Get back in the car and move now." So I do. And seconds later, another car comes spinning across the freeway and smashes head first into the median divider exactly where I had just been standing. And this was the first time, Jacob, that voice in my head had ever said anything nice to me.
Wow.
Yeah. And it saved me. It saved my life, that voice in my head, that up until that point had always been harassing me, had always been pushing me, had always been telling me I wasn't good enough, I wasn't smart enough, I wasn't enough. It's really the voice that drove me to graduate first in my class from Georgetown Law, which doesn't happen without a tremendous amount of studying, more studying than anybody else did, because I had that voice telling me, if you don't study more, you're going to look stupid. Everybody's going to know how stupid you are. So I started to shift this relationship with that voice. And what I realized is that voice had been ignored by me most of my life. And it was like a little child. And you know how a child is, if you ignore it, it just gets louder and louder and louder. It doesn't go away. And that's what this voice had been doing all these years. It had been getting louder and louder and louder, trying to get my attention, moving from maybe in the beginning what had been positive messages like, hey, hello, listen to me, into negative messages because it didn't know how else to get heard. And when I started to engage in self-care, what happened is it got nice, it got helpful, it got useful. And what I was finally able to come to by listening inside to now a voice that I got really cared about me and didn't just want to beat me up, is that I am an entrepreneur, that I was never going to be happy working for somebody else at a big law firm where I had no control over my schedule, but more importantly, I had no control over the impact that I had on the clients' lives that I was serving. And I didn't feel like I was making a difference at that law firm, even though it was the best. I mean, they were great. I love the lawyers at Munger, Tolles & Olson, but I was not serving people the way that I really wanted to, really making a difference in their lives, because I wanted to work with individuals and families, which I was at times. You know, I was also a corporate tax lawyer, but I wanted, when I was in the estate planning group, I was working with individuals and families, but we were not serving them the way that I wanted to serve individuals and families, building relationships with them for a lifetime, feeling their commitment to making things as easy as possible for the people that they loved. And so I left in August of 2006. After just 3 years there, I left and I started my own law practice in Redondo. Well, first in Torrance, where I rented office space from some other attorneys, and saw another way that I didn't want to practice because, you know, these lawyers had been in practice 15, 20, 25 years, and yet they were still reinventing the wheel with every new client that came in. They were still working all hours of the day and night, not because they were being told by law firm management that they needed to, but because they had to in order to make their practices work. And I knew I didn't want to practice like that either, but I really didn't know any other way. And when I went out and I interviewed the most successful lawyers in town and throughout the country in the fields of estate and business planning, what I found is that I didn't want the kind of success that they had. It was not life success. They were overworked and underpaid, underappreciated, working all hours of the day and night. And I didn't want to build something like that. And so I had to create something entirely new. And that's what I did.
So that was in 2006 when you started your own practice.
Yes.
Wow. You know, listening to you telling the story of the revelation. I mean, I had a similar kind of thing when I was working for a firm, just one firm in my entire career, and it was like one late night when I'm sitting there trying to draft some paperwork, and I'm just thinking, you know what am I doing here? It's not the place for me. I can't work for them. I have to create my own vision. Everybody has that different experience in different times, and so tell me, so you started your firm, and then what happened? What was the first challenges that you faced?
So that was in 2000 and actually, I'm sorry, that was not 2006. That was 2003. And
Okay.
by 2006, I had taken that firm, that practice that started out as just me, and turned it into $1 million a year revenue generating business by 2006.
Wow.
So 2003, August of 2003, the first challenges that I faced were it was just me, all alone. Actually, in the beginning, it was my sister and me. My sister, I got this big used desk, and she would sit on one side trying to figure out how to set up my bookkeeping systems. And I would sit on the other side trying to figure out how to do work, how to get work done. And I was exchanging my time in exchange for rent with one of the other attorneys in the office who had some overflow work. And what I was seeing is that the clients that he had coming in were clients that he had had for a long time, but where they had once come in to have him help them protect their families, plan for their children, they were now coming in needing his help to protect their wealth from their children. From their children.
Right.
And I, as a mom, I didn't want to create that kind of a life for my children where, when they're little, I'm planning to pass on my wealth to them. And then as they're older, I'm planning to protect my wealth from them. And I thought that as an attorney, I could have influence over the way that my clients raise their children. And that was kind of a radical idea. Who am I as an attorney to think that? But I started to feel that. I started to really feel that if I could get to work with my clients at an early enough age where they started to think about what are they passing on to their children now during their lifetimes, not just after they died, that I could really make an impact in their lives. So that was the first thing that I noticed. And then the second thing is that I realized that I was not going to be able to do this alone. And I was going to need to hire support. And I was going to need to be able to find the money for that because I didn't have money in savings. I was the sole breadwinner in my family. My husband was a stay-at-home dad. And I didn't know what resources were available to me to support me to grow my practice. Now, what happened is that one day, so there was this historic building in Redondo Beach, California, on the corners of Beryl and Sepulveda, a white house with green shutters, old, historic. Every time I drove by there, I thought, that's the kind of place that I want to have my practice. It's just gorgeous, and everybody knew it, landmark building. And one day, my ex-husband was driving by there at the time we were married, and he saw that it was for rent or for sale, and he called me up. He said, hey, that building that you are so interested in, go check it out. Now, just the night before, the attorney that I was sharing office space with had asked me to partner with him. He wanted me to stay. And I was tempted because he had this established practice already. And I said to him, Rod, I would love to work with you, but what I want to build is something different. Here we are in a high-rise building with black leather furniture, and people have to navigate the parking garage to get to us. I want a building where when people come in, they relax. They don't even feel like they're walking into a lawyer's office. They drive right up to the door. They just are able to completely relax. And he said, oh, you can't do that. You can't create that kind of a practice. And I said, well, I'm going to try it. I want to I want to have a lifetime relationship with my clients. I want to try this. And he said, okay, but you're not going to be able to do it. So the very next day, Todd, my ex, calls me and says this. So I call the guy who bought the building. It turns out the building had been sold to a financial advisor. And I said, hey, Scott, I am supposed to rent office space from you in your building. He said, well, I'm not renting office space. I said, well, just keep an open mind. If you decide to rent office space, call me. That summer, that June, he called me. And he said, Alexis, we've renovated the entire property, and it turns out we are going to rent out the 2 back buildings, the 2 back cottages, and would you like to move in? If so, you need to have them renovated in the next 2 months. Now, again, I didn't have any money. So how was I going to do this? But I knew I had a vision of it. I could see it in just living color that I was going to be able to do it. And I said, yes, I do. I'm going to do it. I'm going to figure it out. And I ended up making a relationship with my local bank, which I didn't even know that you could make a relationship with a local bank at the time. I knew nothing about business, really. And I borrowed $50,000. And I'll tell you, signing the loan papers for that check, I was just biting my nails. Like, oh my God, are they really going to give me money? Like, wow. And they did. They ended up giving me quite a lot of money, actually, but the first one was $50,000. And I built out the most beautiful office space. When people would walk in, they would say, "Where's my massage? Seems like a spa in here." And they relaxed. And it turned out that that was the kind of experience that they wanted when they walked into a law firm. And over the 3 years, I built an entire team of people. I created a whole system for how my phones were answered, what would happen when somebody made an appointment, how to prep for that appointment, what to say during the appointment. We call it the client engagement system. And I got to a point where before I had been engaging maybe 50% of the people who came into my office. Now I was engaging 100% of the people who came into my office, or 97.5, we say. And they were coming in and they were engaging at higher fees than I ever could have commanded before. An average fee of $4,000 or $5,000, where other attorneys in town were charging $1,500 for the same thing, but it was not the same thing at all. And then I started training other lawyers in my office to meet with and engage clients and serve the clients. And within just 3 years, by 2006, we were doing over $1 million a year in revenue. In 2007, I was only going into my office 3 to 4 days a week. And I began training other lawyers on my systems. And then in 2008, I sold my law practice. And in that year, I also wrote the best-selling book on legal planning for parents. And then, and now today, I just train other lawyers on the new law business model that I created when I was in practice for myself.
Wow, anyway, I'm listening to you and I'm kind of thinking, about my own journey. And there's so many things that are so similar. I'm going to send you a picture of my office building, and you're going to cry. It's a historic building in downtown San Diego, and that's exactly what happened to me a year and a half ago. I was looking for that building, seeing that vision. But you're right. Clients they want to feel connected. They don't want to feel that they are going to a same cubicle, or kind of like a stamp of an attorney in a high rise. Just change the name on the plaque.
That's right.
But I know that, and one of the things that a lot of attorneys are complaining, and I get a lot of emails from attorneys. They always say, "Well, how do I break away from the practice?" Yeah. It's easy to say that, but how do you do it? And how do you get out of you described the perfect scenario where you work, you build your business, but then you get sucked into it. How did you manage to get out and work 3 times a week and do the? I know you did the systems, but kind of walk me through that process of thinking about it.
Sure. So I think that the starting place is for you to understand what is your role in your practice. I didn't understand that there were different roles. I thought, well, I'm the lawyer, so I do everything. And that meant everything from managing the office to answering the phones, to doing the marketing, to engaging the clients and serving the clients, and handling the financials. It's my business. I have to do it all. But the truth is that if you have a business, you don't have to do it all. You have a role. And in the beginning, you might need to do all the roles, but then one by one, systematically, you need to replace yourself in those roles. Now, in some ways, this happened for me by accident. And I didn't always do the best job in choosing who would replace me because I didn't have the foresight or I didn't know enough about business to be able to do this in a smart way. But now you can because you're hearing this. So the first role that I replaced for myself, which was smart, was the role of file clerk, right? Printing documents, binding the plans for delivery, confirming appointments with the clients, setting appointments, so answering my phones, right? That's really the first role that you want to replace is the person who's doing the things that, $15, $20 an hour person can do. Answering your phones, booking your appointments, and then all of the filing type work, confirming with the appointments, sending out whatever gets sent out before your initial meetings, following up after the initial meeting to make sure that everything is happening in a strategic way. You can replace that role right away. And you might say, well, I can't afford to replace that role. I don't have any money. Well, I would say to you, you can't afford not to replace that role because otherwise you are doing $15 to $20 an hour work when you could be doing $250 to $500 an hour work. And I don't mean because you're billing hourly. Don't bill hourly anymore unless you're required to by the court. Shift into flat fee, package-based billing, and you can be spending your time going out and networking, going out and meeting prospects, marketing, giving talks, educating your community, and then meeting with prospects and then serving the clients. So everything else that is not that are the first things for you to take off your plate. So the next role that you'd want to hire, by the way, that person, that file clerk role, ultimately transformed into a client services director.
Right.
Client services director. So it's really not just a file clerk. Then your client services director will need a file clerk to support him or her in really being able to be more engaged with the clients. And then the file clerk is more behind the scenes, moving the paper around. Then the next role that you probably want to hire after that would be some kind of an office manager. My office manager literally fell in my lap. I didn't even know what an office manager did. This woman, Nancy, came in and she said, "You need me. You need me to come in and create some systems in your office." And I said, "Okay, I don't really know what that means, but sure, come on in." And then she started to create some systems and some structure. She started to hire a bookkeeper for us and a CPA, which we made bad hiring choices in that area for sure, because I didn't know how to hire, right? So I would hire people by calling them up and saying, "Hi, how much do you cost?" I've learned a lot since then. This is all part of what I teach people, because nobody teaches us this stuff in law school. And so ultimately, I replaced myself in every single role that I possibly could. Ultimately, what allowed me to go down to just 3 to 4 days a week in my office was that I replaced who was even engaging the clients. So I would go out and I would do speaking. I would go out and I would do marketing. And then people would call up and they wouldn't meet with me. They would meet with other attorneys in my office. Now, that's not for everybody.
Right.
Most of you are going to want to be the one that meets with the clients. And if that's the case, then maybe you need to hire a marketing coordinator to do your marketing. I didn't need to hire a marketing coordinator to do my marketing because that's the part that I liked to do. So if you're the one that wants to be meeting with the clients and doing all of the client service, then you need somebody to be out there doing the marketing on your behalf. Now, again, in the beginning, you're going to do it all. But systematically, one by one, you have to look at replacing yourself in all the various roles so that you remain just in the role that you love, that you want to do.
Right. And I think replacing the staff and the support is something that's doable. But I think a lot of attorneys are afraid to separate themselves from the name of the firm. I want to see Jacob. I want to see George. Your name is on the firm. But I think the key is, and this is something that I've started doing in the last couple of years in my own firm, is you don't need to see Jacob anymore. You don't need to see the main guy, because if you keep seeing the main guy, there's only 8 hours a day. But how do you choose the attorney who's going to replace you, and how do you train somebody to be you or your state of mind?
Yeah. So this was another challenging thing. I knew that in order to have attorneys in my office that would be able to serve the clients the way that I did, that I would have to have systems. And it's funny because I tend to think of myself as not somebody good at training other people, but it's not true. I'm actually very good at training other people. But I haven't been great at articulating this is how I do it. So what I did is I created this client engagement system that documented literally word for word the script that I took people through when they called to make an appointment, when they called to just inquire about something, when they got into my office and sat down with me. I literally documented everything about that process. And then I began to teach it to the other attorneys in my office. And here's the most important part that I did, and I didn't really realize this until later, is that I debriefed every meeting with them in the beginning. So, okay, these people came in and they didn't engage. Why not? What would you do differently next time? What did you do right? What will you always make sure you do every time?
That's a great point.
That was actually a process that I started with myself, right? When I only had a 50% engagement rate, I started that process with myself of looking at, okay, why didn't these people move forward? What did they not hear from me that they needed to hear? Or what did they hear me say that I shouldn't have said, right? And I began to break down the process, and ultimately what I saw is that I didn't know how to quote my fees. That when it would get to the time to quote my fees, I would kind of shy away from it. I would withdraw. I would change my tempo. I would get uncomfortable because I didn't really have a good solid system for quoting my fees. And once I created the system for quoting my fees, literally everything changed. I invested about $12,000, a little more than $12,000 to create that system, not to mention all of what it cost me and all of the clients I lost before I created that system. Just $12,000 to hire a consultant to create that system with me. And the very first time that I used it, it paid for itself again and again and again and again, because now I was able to actually allow my clients to choose their own fee. And that was just a huge turning point in my practice, where all of a sudden I knew that every person that came in would engage at an average fee of $4,000 to $5,000, and now I could start making investments in my practice that up until that point I couldn't make because I was afraid that, was the money really going to come in? Right. Could I really count on it? So I was scared to go out of pocket and hire people because what if I couldn't make payroll? What if I couldn't pay myself? But once I knew that clients were going to say yes and that they were going to choose a fee that likely was going to be around $4,000 or $5,000, now I can relax. Now I can say, okay, all I need to do is get 20 phone calls, because 20 phone calls will result in 15 appointments, which will result in 15 times 4, so $60,000. Okay, now I can hire people.
Can you share just one tip about that retention system? It's very interesting.
Yeah. So we call it the client engagement system, and there's so many that I can share. Okay, so the most important one is that whoever is making your appointments, whether it's you or somebody that you've trained, first of all, you need to eliminate the idea that they're making an appointment for a free initial consultation. Eliminate that from your vocabulary from here on out. Not because you're not going to meet with somebody for free, but because you are going to meet with them for an educational meeting that has a purpose and a value. So we changed our free initial consultations into family wealth planning sessions. Mm-hmm. During this family wealth planning session, we're going to sit down with you and we're going to look at what would happen to your children and to your assets if something were to happen to you now. You're going to tell us what you don't like about that, or you're going to leave knowing, great, everything will happen the way that I want. But if things will not happen the way that you want, then we're going to design a plan to make sure that they would go the way that you want, so that you can have the peace of mind of knowing that your family is not going to be left with a big mess and a lot of stress after you're gone. So when the person is making the appointment, it's not about them making an appointment for you to come in for a will or a trust or a healthcare directive or a power of attorney or a free initial consultation or a divorce or an immigration resolution. Right. You're coming in to get educated. The meeting would normally be $750, but because you called from this ad, because you called from this direct mail piece, because you came in referred from this person, or because you attended this workshop, we're going to waive that fee so long as you reserve your appointment time with a credit card. When would you like to come in? We have Monday at 3 p.m. or Wednesday at 5 p.m. Which one of those is better for you? That's very good. A big chunk of our
so they feel committed to coming to the office. They feel that it's not just some kind of they cannot just jerk you around seeing many lawyers. This is going to be something serious, and they made a commitment by giving the card. Interesting.
Yeah, so they give the commitment by giving the credit card. Nothing's going to be charged on the card. It's just like when you're reserving a hotel room. And then I'm going to give you another tip. I'm giving you big chunks of my system here. I'm going to give you another tip, which is we're going to give you homework to do before you come in. So for me, there were times when clients would not be able to get in to see me for 6 weeks because my schedule was booked out. So they could either come in and meet with another attorney if they wanted to see another attorney in the next week or two, or they could see me in 6 weeks if they wanted to wait.
Right.
Either way, they're going to get homework. So they're starting the process right away. And the homework is homework that we need anyway to be able to make that first appointment really valuable for them. And this applies in any practice area. Other than maybe DUI, where so they want to get in right away. Right. So you need to have a system for that. But you can adapt this to any practice area. There's another attorney, Rachel, who has applied this exact system in criminal defense. Ben Glass took pieces of this system and applied it in his own personal injury practice. And so you can take this system and adapt it in any practice area. And then once they come in and meet with you, there's a whole structure of what do you do in that initial meeting. And, we go in depth in that in our system. And I'm actually having a training call, a webinar sometime in the next couple of weeks that do you send out links with your podcast?
Yes. What we're going to do is everything that we talked about here, we'll have links, and any other links that you want to share, we'll put it there. Absolutely. And we'll even tweet it for you.
Great. Okay, good.
Absolutely.
So look for that link, and you can come on the training webinar, and you'll hear more of the details of this system. You can take notes, and then you can hear how you can take the next steps if you want to apply it in your own practice.
And I know that a lot of our listeners are going to be very happy about that because I get a lot of emails, questions about confusion in the practice. And, Alexis, people who are listening to the show so far, they see you as the successful woman, which you are. But I know that you had some moments of failure and
oh, yeah.
I had an interview with James Altucher, and James, he was actually the first guest on our show.
Wow.
And he, when he came on the show, he told me that failure is really something that drives him, and he's not afraid to expose himself. And this is something that I noticed that you, in the last few years, have been following a similar pattern where you completely reveal yourself. Yeah. We'll talk about it in a second, but it's something that I'm not there yet, but I know that whenever I do that, there are very good results, and I see it a lot on our Facebook page. Whenever I share, we have more than 100,000 people on our page. Whenever I share something personal, we get so many comments and shares. Yes. You just want to know who the hell is this lawyer.
That's right.
But it's not always easy to do it. And the way James does, I would never do it. I could never. I would like to, but I couldn't. But I know that you had this interesting story about your failure, and I would like you to share with us.
Sure. So let me start by saying that this applies to you too, all of you. One of the things that I teach is when you have to send out an email newsletter, I think, and then also be on social media to build a relationship with your clients or your prospects. And in your email newsletter and on your social media, the more personal information that you can put, the more likely people are to pay attention to what you're sending out, to open your emails, to not just see you as cold, robot lawyer, which is frankly how people think of you, until you open yourself up a little bit. So I want to encourage you to do that. So my story of failure is, number one, you could search it. If you search Alexis Neely bankruptcy, you'll read all about it, and you'll read about a lot of people who are, I guess I would call internet trolls, and they have decided to take it upon themselves to shred me to pieces as much as they possibly can, except that it's great, fine, talk about it all you want. To me, it's what makes me human. And so fast forward to 2009, and I had hit the pinnacle of success 3 times. First in my class, Tolles and Olson, then building my own law practice to $1 million a year business, then selling that, and then building another business, training lawyers to $1 million a year business, doing about $2 million in revenue in 2 businesses. And I began to have a spiritual crisis. Some people might call it a spiritual awakening, spiritual crisis, whatever you want to call it. I recognized that I was not actually having the life that I wanted. And I began to dismantle everything piece by piece by piece so that I could discover who I really was if the money didn't matter. Because I'd been driven for so many years by my ego, by my desire to be on TV, by my desire to be known as a $1 million business superwoman. And I knew that that wasn't really who I was, that I was something much deeper than all of that. But how could I find out who that was without letting go of everything? I did not know how. So I let go of everything. I fired my whole team. I broke up with my boyfriend. I moved from LA to Colorado, and I moved to a farm. I reduced my expenses to nothing by stopped paying on my debt, stopped paying on my mortgage. I only paying what I absolutely had to in order to keep my family alive. And I reestablished relationships. Because in all those years that I was building my businesses so hard and so driven, I lost sight of, I think, what was really the most important thing. Why I started my businesses in the first place was because I wanted more time with my family. I wanted to have community and friends, but I lost sight of that in the pursuit of, making all this money. And I had even lost sight of why I was in business and serving lawyers. And I had gotten to a point where I did not like the model that I had created in my business, not in my law practice. My law practice was great if I wanted to be a lawyer serving clients one-to-one, but I didn't. Once I mastered that, I recognized that wasn't for me, that I'm here to teach. And I believe that really I'm here to teach people who are in the midst of a process of transformation. Whether that be a lawyer who is transforming from being focused just on the money and winning lawsuits into somebody who really loves their practice and has plenty of time for their family and is loved by their clients, or somebody who's transforming from, a corporate job that they're just working for the money into a business that they love, into a life that they love. Regardless, I'm here to support people to transform. And how could I do that if I didn't go through my own process of transformation? So I decided to do what was the thing that scared me the most. Bar none, what scared me the most was looking stupid, was running out of money. And so I dove in there and I did it. I let myself run out of money. As much as I could. I discovered I can't actually run out of money, but as much as I could. My income went down to $5,000 a month. I didn't have any support at home. I lived the way most people live. And during that time, I got to ask myself, who am I if money doesn't matter? Do I really want to still serve lawyers? What am I here for? And coming through that process, and now on the other side of it, what I discovered is that, yes, I love serving lawyers. I'm uniquely suited to serve lawyers. Mm-hmm. There's almost nobody, maybe you, Jacob, but almost nobody who has this unique combination of right brain creativity and left brain logic that has built $1 million a year revenue generating business, law practice, that is so committed to helping lawyers love their clients and be loved by their clients, that if I made the decision not to serve lawyers anymore, I would be doing the world a disservice. And so I just had to rebuild my businesses in a way that actually felt good to me. And when I made the decision to file bankruptcy, and it was a decision, I had to go through a real process of, should I do this? Because I could have just made more money. I mean, I've brought in over $10 million over the past 8 years. So I could have made more money. But what I recognized is that in order to do that, I would have had to continue in a business model that was not ultimately serving the world. That I would have had to continue charging more for my services than I really wanted to, making them inaccessible to most lawyers. Right. That I would have had to continue to work 12, 14, 16 hours a day, not being able to have a relationship with my kids that I wanted to. In fact, my son is right here right now, and he's 11 years old now, and my daughter is 14, and I actually get to have a relationship with them. And so I made the choice that sacrificed my brand, sacrificed my image, sacrificed my reputation, because that choice was the most responsible choice I could make. And, people are saying, oh, you took $880,000 is the number that they're saying. It actually wasn't that much. It was $500,000. You took out loans of that much and you didn't pay them back. And it's true. I didn't pay them back. But when I looked at what the cost would be of paying back those loans, and I looked at the value that I could provide in the world if I didn't pay back those loans, I made the most responsible choice. And I made the decision to provide more value in the world than I would have if I would have just sucked as much money as I could out of the marketplace, which I could have done to pay back those loans. Instead, I said, sorry, banks, you made an investment in me. It was a great investment. You didn't get the money back. The banks didn't, but the world did. And I'm not going to suck as much money as I can out of the marketplace. Instead, I'm going to get into a deep relationship with how can I provide as much value as possible to as many people as possible. And that's what's happening today. So today, the businesses have been reconstructed. I had structured them in such a way that now I don't own them. I am on teams that serve the people that were served by the businesses. There's two businesses. One serves lawyers, and we train lawyers on this new law business model that I created. And the other one teaches financial liberation, which is a process of being able to be clear about your own value and ask for that value in a way that people can say yes to it because you're in alignment with your own entrepreneurial archetype. And then, building your business around that in alignment with the life that you want. And I'm just on the team of those businesses. I'm part of a community that's bringing those businesses into the world. And yes, today I'm making great money again. On the other side of all that, making great money. I'm supporting my family, supporting my community. But most important, really, Jacob, beyond all of that, is that how I keep score is no longer based on my credit score. It's no longer based on how much money I have in the bank, because I don't have a lot of money in the bank. I keep it all in flow. I keep it all going. The more that I give out, the more that I receive back. And I keep score based on how grateful do I feel every day, even for the people on the internet that are saying nasty things about me. And how much impact am I making in the world? How many people am I impacting? And today I'm impacting hundreds of lawyers and thousands of their clients and thousands of people through our Eyes Wide Open Life teachings. And it will become much more. I'm writing a book called You Are Not Your Credit Score to help other people who either have not tapped into the credit system because they're scared to do it, or who have and have gotten in over their head and are living in stress and working at jobs that are not serving the world because they are trying to pay off this debt. And I'm writing another book called Financial Liberation, and I'm contributing to the world net, $1 million compared to how it felt like I was contributing when really it was about I'm afraid of running out of money and how can I make as much money as possible.
And your transformation is kind of complete because you actually you have the persona, the Ali Shanti, where it kind of when you use that, it gives you the notion that you are a different person in a way, I think.
Yeah, it's a little confusing for people. So what Jacob is referring to is that through this whole process of the transformation, this other persona arose in me named Ali Shanti. And it is really confusing for me because this was a part of myself that for my entire life I suppressed. I kind of knew her in high school, maybe.
Right.
But then once I got into college and law school, I hid her away because she wasn't acceptable. This part of myself that just wasn't acceptable. But now as an adult woman, I'm 40 years old now, and I couldn't keep hiding away a part of myself that is so important to me, and there's people that judge her. There's parts of me that judge her, right? So the Alexis Neely part of me, and Jacob, maybe you'll put up some pictures of, both
absolutely
both sides of me, and you could see this massive transformation. the Alexis Neely part of me judges, or used to, not so much anymore because the integration has happened, but was like, oh my God, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? But I was doing it, and I am doing it because it's what's true for me. Ali Shanti is my core, and Alexis Neely is amazing. You know, she's the part of me that did graduate
Right.
first in my class from Georgetown Law and did build all these $1 million businesses. And when I'm doing business, I'm Alexis.
Hmm.
Like the lawyers that we train, they call me Alexis. And
Right.
yet now many of them are starting to also know this Ally side of me. And that's honestly, it's like, it's a little confronting for me, but it's all part of the integration. And so I imagine in the future, what I'll really be helping people with is how to own all parts of themselves fully,
Right.
completely, without shame, hiding nothing, because we're all hiding parts
Right.
of ourselves.
Absolutely.
I mean, every single person that I've talked to has acknowledged to me that they are hiding parts of themselves.
They're just afraid to come out in the way you did. And
Yes.
and maybe maybe I'm allowed to call you Ali.
Yes, yes, of
Very good.
course.
I'm very honored. As we come to the end of our show, I want you to share a very special quote that I know that you, it's your quote. Why don't you share it with our audience?
Yeah. So this quote came to me after my divorce, and I should mention that today my ex-husband, my kid's dad, lives with us. We're not in romantic relationship anymore. It's been 8 years since we've gotten divorced, but um, it didn't start out that way. We had a highly contentious divorce. He was full of anger and rage and just really angry at me and fighting. And then through the process of the divorce, it came to me that every conflict, every challenge really, but every conflict is our greatest opportunity to be more of who we really are. And so I invite you to ask yourself, who are you? Who are you really? Remember back to why you went to law school in the first place. I bet you went to law school to help people. I bet you went to law school to make a difference in people's lives. And yet today you might find yourself caught up in drama and conflict, being mean and nasty to opposing counsel, or as one of our lawyers, after he transformed, said to us, I found myself counting the days to when the interrogatories would be due by opposing counsel and pumping my fist because I'd ruined somebody's Christmas. That's not who you really
No.
are. That's not who you want to be. And so look at every conflict, every challenge, every hard part as an opportunity to be more of who you really are and step into that now. And that's what I'm inviting for all of us.
Great. What a great way to end the show. And I think, goes away with our concept of being nice and kind and enchanting, the new way of lawyers to practice.
Yes.
And what we're going to do is we'll share all the links to where we can find you. But why don't you verbally mention just at least one website where people can find you? We'll put all of
Sure.
them in.
Yeah. So the best place to start probably is at well, there are so many, but if you want to read my whole story of how I built my practice into $1 million a year revenue generating business and the 6 law practice systems I put in place, and you could take pieces of that for yourself and do the same thing, I would start with getthemanifesto.com, and you'll read my law business manifesto, enlightened enlightened principles for evolved lawyers, I think is the subtitle,
Perfect.
and you can begin to put in place some of those systems into your own practice and life today as well.
Very good. And we'll share all the links, and I'm sure we're going to get a lot of questions on that too. Thank you so much, Alexis.
Thank
And
you,
this is Jacob
Jacob.
Sapochnik, enchantinglawyer.com. And we look forward to seeing you on our next show. Any questions you have about this or any other, just email me. And I'm very happy that we had this show. Thank you.